The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com. And by the Change Execution Group. Visit 360lifetransformations.com. Before we get into today's show, I want to invite you to connect with the Healthcare Security Cast on a new platform. It's a text-based platform called Community. To join, all you have to do is text my community number, and that number is 647-372-2042. That number again is 647-372-2042.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, September the 22nd. I'm joined today by Jason Swasey. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I always like to start off by getting to know about our guest, so I'll ask you the somewhat loaded question. Who is Jason Swasey?
So, Jason Swasey I grew up in Southern Maine, where I lived up until about 13 months ago. Went to high school in Southern Maine, was part of Police Explorers. It's part of the Boy Scouts, where we focused in on police and sort of how they work and shadowed them. Went to college, did the normal associates, bachelors, and masters, sort of out of whack though, out of series, and finally settled in healthcare security in about 2007, where I've been in healthcare since 2007 till 2015. I was in security as a supervisor. Then when I graduated my bachelor's, I went into risk management, where I spent 5 years primarily working on patient relations and patient complaints. And then in August of last year, moved to Rutland, Vermont with the family and started at Rutland Regional Medical Center, where I'm currently the safety and security manager. Also have taken on facility access. So doing those things and trying to help the org be safe and secure during COVID, and doing what I can to get that job taken care of.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I reached out to you as well that was intriguing to me was your career path. Now, you've had an interesting career path, and you've alluded to it a little bit in answering the last question. What has led to you being involved with healthcare security today?
So in college, I started working part-time in law enforcement, where I worked for about 8 years in the coastal communities of Maine. They take on a lot of part-time reserve officers in the summer, and I did that in some of the coastal towns. One of the coastal towns was Old Orchard Beach. I did 4 summers as a reserve officer there. And then I went on to be a judicial marshal for the state of Maine. That was really my first job or career. While there, I worked, and I had gotten married and had 2 children. And a friend of mine at the time was looking for security officers at Maine Medical Center. So in early 2007, I went there, and within 6 months, I had been promoted to supervisor. I then went to Southern Maine Healthcare as a supervisor. Just because of the commute mainly, it was about half the commute. So that was a huge benefit for me and my family. And then worked there right up until about 13 months ago, mainly in security and then in risk, like I had mentioned. And when I got my master's, wanted to sort of come back to security and progress in my career development. So took this job and we moved, and now we're here. So I think the combination of having a background in security and law enforcement has helped sort of understand how the direction of healthcare security is going and trending towards, especially as things become increasingly violent.
Excellent. And you've obviously had some supporters throughout your career. Who are some of the mentors and influencers that have helped you get to where you are?
So in prepping for the interview, I sort of thought about this question a lot, and I took some time to really digest it. And I came to a realization that I've been really blessed, not only in my whole life, but especially in my career path. I've had countless mentors and leaders. And, I think some of the biggest would have to be my grandfather. My grandfather was in law enforcement and in security at a federal level at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. And he just really always set the tone of do the right thing and be just and, try to let that be your guide. So that was a really good mentor when I was younger. And then I had mentioned Police Explorers. When I joined Police Explorers, I had two phenomenal mentors, Charlie Brown and Brian Nadeau. Charlie Brown was sort of like into community policing before it was even a thing. And he was not our school resource officer, but he would come several times a week to visit us. So I built a rapport with Charlie Brown probably in middle school. And then when they had started Police Explorers, he had talked to me about it and I joined. And, he was just always that pillar of the community that was like, he's a good guy. I want to be like him and sort of make sure I'm always doing the right thing and embracing that. Unfortunately, in my second year of Police Explorers, Charlie passed away. He was actually at a Red Sox game in Fenway, and he died of a massive heart attack. So that was pretty hard. It was my first loss. I was 16 years old, and it was the first police funeral I'd ever been to. And I'll never forget the sense of family that was there. I remember police officers coming from around the country to see him because they had met him once or twice, and it was great. As a matter of fact, my family now stay in close connection with his mother, Helen, and my daughters actually call her Grandma. So, it's important to me to make sure she's a part of our life because I think I owe that to Charlie to sort of take that torch. She was at our wedding. She brought one of his holsters and it laid at a memory table at our wedding. So he's always been a constant figure in my life, even though he passed away so many years ago. The other individual, Brian, he was without a doubt one of the smartest people I have ever known. He could just remember things and teach them and make it easy to learn. Brian was a police officer in York for several years. Actually, towards the end of my Police Explorers, he actually joined the FBI and went on to do a bunch of things and retired as I believe the assistant special agent in charge of the Baltimore office. And now he's the deputy commissioner, one of the deputy commissioners of Baltimore Police Department. And I keep in touch with him and I talk to him and sort of seek guidance from time to time. So that's been huge. Then progressing into other mentors, I sort of need to bring up an individual I worked with side by side for many years, Chad Stevens. Chad and I were both supervisors at the hospital in Maine, and we used each other. We have a very good friendship. He's probably my best friend, and we are able to bounce things off each other, debrief each other, and I never really saw him as a mentor until I saw another podcast by Simon Sinek about mentors. And, he really said that it's a quid pro quo relationship that you learn off of each other and you give and take. And it's a bond that you build between one another. And that's really, I think, so true because a lot of times I have stuff in my mind and I'm running through it. And it isn't until I can verbally say it to someone, but I don't know who to really bring it to. So I always bring it to Chad and we bounce ideas off of each other. He's a assistant director of a university in Maine. So we both stayed in the security field. So that's been really helpful. So, they've been great. And, then coming back to someone like Simon Sinek, I listen to his books. I listen to his podcasts. I fully believe in leaders eat last. You have to find your why. You have to work those things. And I try to teach that to my staff and day in, day out that we have to set the example.
Excellent. And thank you for sharing all that. The one thing that you kind of mentioned there towards the end that got my attention was you mentioned you listened to Simon Sinek's book. So I'm big on Audible and the audiobooks and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's been your experience? And I'm assuming you have a bit of a commute, and that probably helps pass some of the time. But so that's some of your learning, I guess,
Yeah,
on the
so
commute?
definitely. I'm big into Audible when my daughters aren't stealing my credits. So at the beginning of the month, we have to sort of fight each other, and like we wake up at midnight and steal them. So we do that. But, a lot of Simon Sinek stuff, warrior mindset type stuff. I forget the book. I think it's not Ultimate Warrior, but it's done by a couple of Navy SEALs, and they talk about how to bring that mindset and dedication into a business realm. And it's true. You have to look and sort of teach and mentor and lead these people to get them to where you want to be. You just can't pick them and hire them without some sort of vetting and bringing them on board and really giving the dedication to them so they can flourish and be the next generation of healthcare security and do the right thing. And, we live in such a delicately balanced niche where, healthcare security, it's not like traditional security, and it's definitely not law enforcement, but it has things that bring them both together at times. And we really need a certain specific type of employee that's trained and has the tools and the skill set to be able to do those things, make the right decision.
Excellent. And that answer actually segues great into the next question that I had for you, which is, it's just in terms of recruiting and hiring. Obviously, they're important elements of any healthcare security program, which you've alluded to as well. Yeah. What are you doing at your facility to get the caliber of frontline security staff that you need?
Yeah, so when I was just a supervisor back in Maine, we were working and trying to get up to the next level and really become distinguished as a security department through the state of Maine. One of the things I figured out real quickly is that a lot of people don't wake up when they're 13 or 14 and say, you know what, I'm going to be a healthcare security officer, and that's my career goal. They have peripheral things that sort of can narrow down into that. So one of the things we started doing was looking for people who have career aspirations and want to go into helping others and have a drive and a calling to help others. And a lot of times that comes down to law enforcement. They want to go into law enforcement. So they're in school for law enforcement, but they need a part-time job. Or they're just out of school and they're looking for a job for a few years to get some training and experience to move on to law enforcement. And that's where we really started capturing a lot of our great employees, with these people who are out of school, looking for experience and wanting to build sort of a foundation of a good resume and have some stepping stones. So we really placated off of that, and that has worked. As a matter of fact, it's worked really well for me recently, because I've gone to some of the schools around here during the COVID crisis and said, hey, listen, I need employees and you have students that are virtually learning. We can sort of help each other. Like, I'll give you all the information and the flyers and everything. Can you just sort of hand them out? And we've gotten several employees that have worked out very well for us from the colleges. The other side of that is the sort of the people who have that career experience, who have that learning, who are mentors and who are leaders, but they're at the end of their career and they don't want to be in law enforcement, or it's time for them to retire from law enforcement or any career, corrections, anything really. But they're not really to completely call it quits. They just want something a little less fast paced, a little more of their hours, and they want to continue having some benefits. So we've played off of that as well, and that's helped us significantly. We have people who have been police officers for 40 years as supervisors, and they retire and they come here and they work well with the younger crew because they want to mentor them, and they have a wealth of knowledge to give them on a day in, day out basis. And that's helped significantly. So the two sort of groups work out great. And yeah, we may only get them 5, 6, 7 years, but that 5, 6, 7 years is great and helps us build and learn and give them what they need to move on to their life goals. And it's really worked well so far.
Excellent. Now, you've established some effective measures to hire the quality staff that you need. What are some of the practices you're using to train them for their duties?
Yeah. When I got to Rutland about 13 months ago, we were sort of in flux. So we did things, just basic little things like getting them high quality uniforms that they could have that aren't tearing and wearing. We got them new ballistic vests that are front zippers and load bearing, and we put all their tools on that. And along with that, we got them plates that were stab proof, stab resistant slash resistant, to help give them let them know that their safety means a lot to us and we want them to succeed. Getting them uniform, getting them a more concise schedule on better hours, and working as teams. No more split shifts and you're working with different people all the time. You really have this team, first, second, and third shifts, where we have 4 to 5 guys assigned to those shifts, and that's who they work with all the time. And they get to know each other, and they build that team morale and enthusiasm on their shifts. And it works great because they then can play to their strengths and weaknesses. And that's really helped. Some other training we're starting to deploy is mental health training. We're looking at changing, hopefully, to something like Moab soon, giving them more training, getting them to be trainers themselves so they can come back and train the other officers. We're working on all those things, and we've seen a lot of morale go up. But just making sure they have the tools for their daily needs, that's been huge as well. Having enough computers and monitors and workstations, and trying to build rapport with other units and departments by going out and being seen and just stopping by and saying, hey, what's going on today? Is there anything we should know about? What can we do to help? Those things are what is going to make us a better department and a better organization at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the things that really ingrain you into the hospital and really just make you invaluable. I found that myself when I was a frontline guard, just having those conversations with the clinical staff, leading some of the training. Sometimes I was one of the CPI instructors. It really makes it more personal for them they're able to associate with the security team. So it definitely helps and goes a long way.
Definitely. Building those rapports with the departments and being able to go up to a unit and know someone by their first name, and having that little knowledge and rapport with them, you won't believe the amount of intelligence you'll get. The guy over in 468 is starting to act up, because he's mad his wife isn't here tonight. Now all of a sudden we know that if we get called up in an hour or two. But if we never engage the staff or the visitors or the patients in a positive manner, we're never going to find that out. We're never going to be able to help.
So the other thing too I'd like to touch on is retention. Now it's obviously a key factor to, now that you're hiring the quality people, you're getting the staff in that you want. How do you keep them? What are you doing in terms of retention within your program?
Yeah, again, when we were prepping for the interview, one of the things I thought about is retention. And, I don't dwell on it that much. I think about it, and I want to keep great staff, but I also know that no matter what I do, they need a healthy work-life balance, and they need to be able to feel free to go and grow. So, as far as retention, yeah, I want to embrace them going to trainings and feeling like they're part of the team and everything. But, I don't want to also hold them back from going onto their career path goals or even moving away. I have an officer right now who is probably going to move away soon, but she is probably one of the best officers we've had in a while. And, yeah, it stinks that she's going to go, but the good part is she was here for a year. She made a lot of good advances for the security program. She helped with training, but at the end of the day, she has to do what's best for her. And I totally understand that. But to retain people, I think we've gotten a raise within the last year, which is great, but it's not the end all be all. Everyone always says, if I just had more money, I would stay. And I agree with that to a certain extent, but on the other side, I don't agree with it, because you're always going to live right at the cusp of your means. And I could increase pay dramatically, and that's not really going to help morale. At the end of the day, it's that sense of team, the sense of ownership, the sense of pride, the skill set that you acquire and you take pride and have great integrity. That's really what's going to help retain you, because you like your job And it's going to also have you have self-pride, so you carry yourself in a different way and you do the responsible right thing at the right time.
And I think the value in that too, you talk about, the one employee that you gave the example of there where they went on to do something else. When you're going into the colleges to do your recruiting, it's another great selling feature. Just really sells the strength of your program.
Yeah, and one of the things that's at the core of what I embrace in my program altogether is the de-escalation. I have always said I can teach anyone to go hands-on. I can give you the hands-on aspect of it. That's just a process. I can teach you a process. But to be able to play that game of verbal judo or mental chess and sit with a patient or a staff member or anyone that you may get called to and talk to them and get them to de-escalate, that's what takes unique people. And I will spend all the time in the world if people are willing to work on that skill. And that skill set will take them so far in life, not just in law enforcement or anything, but in any career as they mature and get older. That sense of communication and ability to calmly talk through things and respectfully talk to people who are in crisis is a true skill set that will be invaluable for years to come for them.
Excellent. Now, another thing that's come up over and over again throughout this conversation is mentoring. And I know this is something that's important to you. In the recent months, it's been something that I've been putting a lot of thought and into as well. Obviously, like I said, it's an important topic for you. How are you mentoring the staff in your program?
Yeah, so that's a great question because COVID sort of threw us a curveball. My philosophy for mentoring was always, I have to be right at the elbow next to my staff because I want them to know that I'm there for them through thick and thin. And I want them to be able to see that I will be there to work alongside them. I'm not afraid to do what they do. And I'm not afraid to sit and engage them. And I try to always, no matter what's going on, keep an open door. So I want them to be able to feel like, hey, listen, I need to come chat about whatever. Come in and talk with me. We can talk about whatever. I've had people come in and talk to me about personal issues, and I'm fine with that. I will spend time with them. They need someone to listen to them. It's not always me talking. A few of the things is, you got to practice the pause in life. You have to sort of stop and listen and really understand what people are going through. Going back to Simon Sinek, one of the things he says is like, always try to be the last to talk, listen to everyone. Especially when you're in a position of authority, go into these meetings and just listen to everyone's side and let them do the talking. And then once everyone's talked, then come out. Because if you are the person in authority and you go in and you say, hey, listen, I think we should do it that way, a lot of people are going to just agree with you because you're in that position of authority or leadership. I want to hear all the ideas. I want to be open and receptive to everything. And I try my best to do that. No one's batting 1,000. So I know I don't do it all the time. And it's hard to do, especially once you get in positions of leadership and authority. It's harder to sit back and not say your thoughts and opinions. And sometimes you just have to do that. You have to practice that day in, day out. And, that's the type of mentor I want to be. I want to be someone who they feel comfortable with coming to me so we can problem solve together and work on issues. And they know that they can depend on me to call when anything happens. I think that's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's how I feel about it. And that's how I'm approaching it.
No, and I have to agree with you. That's all, it's all very good stuff. And it's funny, I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today where, we ended up talking about mentors. It was part of the advice I gave was, you need to seek mentors. And for me, I like to seek mentors for different areas of life. So not just work as well. Yeah. We were talking about parenting as well. I have 4 kids myself. So, I try to find people who I can model as a father even. I stole this idea from Sam Asselstine, one of my buddies, but he presented to one of my classes one year, and he had this picture that was, it was him in the center of it, and then everybody who's influenced him throughout his career outside of that. And you mentioned Simon Sinek, which I'm assuming you haven't met Simon Sinek personally, but
I do.
but he's one of the people who's influenced you. Is there any other people? I could name a ton of them myself, but is there anybody else who you haven't met who's been an influence to you?
You know, and this is going to be like corny and sort of like cliche, but people like Bill Belichick. You know, I grew up a huge Pats fan, and we were talking about them earlier this week. And I'm old enough to remember the Patriots in the '80s, and it was doom and gloom. And then in the '90s they sort of started to get better. They had Parcells, they had Bledsoe, and there was light. And then we had Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I think two people who are huge leaders and huge influencers, and it's because of their dedication. And they live, eat, and breathe these things on a daily basis, and they're constantly playing that mental game of chess. And that's really when I teach. I used to be a Moab instructor. When I used to teach Moab, it was always I was trying to talk about the mental game of chess. You have to be thinking 3 or 4 moves that you could possibly play, but not only your opponent's 3 or 4 moves, but then your 3 or 4 moves to all their moves. So it quickly branches out and spreads out to multiple dimensions. And that's the challenge. That's the people who have that skill set are definitely mentors and leaders to me, because it is such an intense intellectual game, and it's draining. Like and I'm sure you've been there when you worked frontline security, sitting in a patient room for an hour or two, trying to de-escalate and getting them to. It's a huge feeling of accomplishment, but it's also mentally draining, and it is sort of a double-edged sword, because you come out and you're like, this is great, like I made a difference today. And on the opposite end, you're drained because of all that like thinking you were doing of what body language should I have, what body language are they showing, what should I say, what verbiage should I use, all that. It really takes you to be up to date on your game.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned Bill Belichick, and now myself, I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. So for me, the true measure of Bill Belichick is what he does with Cam Newton this year. So I'm kind of watching them from a distance this year, because I really enjoyed watching Cam Newton over the last few years, but we'll see what he does this year with it.
So far so good.
Absolutely. Now, I want to kind of go off track, and you've mentioned Simon Sinek as well. Is there any So if we're to talk about books or even Audible, anything that you're listening to, what are you listening to or reading right now?
So right now, honestly, like the leadership mentor stuff, nothing specific. I'm not listening to anything right now, but in all my free time, I am drawn to the leadership mentoring. And my favorite author is Brad Thor. I listened to a ton of his books when I was working third shift. I started to listen to, I think it was Vince Flynn. I had listened to some of his books. Those are the type of things, those suspense thrillers that also have sort of like truth to history and to culture and geographic. I like that. Those are sort of what draws me in. But, things have been so busy lately that, I want to be completely honest. My reading list has grown while the books I'm reading has been short.
That's definitely fair. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you want to discuss?
I think the biggest thing is, while we're in this crisis and going through COVID, we have to be mindful of everyone's mental health and mental well-being. And, I said it before, practicing the pause and really thinking before we interject our opinions and thoughts. But we need to be watching out for one another to make sure we stay recharged and can get through this long term, because I'm seeing a lot of fatigue, and I know what that will do to people's mental health in the long run. And it's so important for me to not just help my department, but all the departments, and try to practice to be kind to others that I don't even know. And, it's those little simple things that you do that you don't know that have a huge ripple effect on people. And I want everyone to sort of just try to pause for a second and try to think of what you can do to help and be more kind and gentle.
That's great advice. What can we expect to see from you moving forward, Jason?
Yeah, so, I've only been in Rutland for about 13 months. And although 13 months seems like a long time, it's not really. I feel like I'm just getting integrated and I'm just starting to feel catch my pace, so to speak, in Rutland. I would like to keep on in security and grow and mature in my career and field. But, I think my story is definitely not fully written yet. I want to continue to grow intellectually. I've contemplated about going back to get my Juris Doctorate. I've contemplated getting my PhD. I just don't know which yet, but I love being in school. I love being academic. And then just trying to help others. That's really my calling, is trying to help others. And if I do that in healthcare security or other leadership roles in healthcare, that's great. I want to be able to be a well-rounded person that can help.
Awesome. Now, as we wrap up, do you have a special message you'd like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Special message is, as hard as it is, always do the right thing. Always look at your process, try to have a just culture. And it is so easy just to do the short work, but knowing that if we spent more time on something, that we could accomplish great things and improve our processes, and also really get to a just culture where we are then growing as an organization to be better in healthcare. So I think we always have to fight the good fight and do the right thing. And sometimes that's a little harder and longer, but it pays off tenfold in the long run. So that's sort of my message.
Awesome. Now, as we wrap up, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So, I included this on some of my emails to you, but, the best way to get a hold of me is probably either emailing me or actually just calling my personal cell. One of the biggest things that I try to do as a leader is be available to my people and to help them. And honestly, I give everyone my cell number, and I try to make myself available 24/7. So in all honesty, I have no issue giving out my personal cell phone, and I would encourage, if anyone ever needs anything, to reach out and feel free to ask me, because that's how we're really going to better ourselves, is by sharing our knowledge and networking and coming together to share our ideas and build a greater healthcare security community. So my personal cell is 207-831-0223. I also have LinkedIn. I don't know if you can include the link, or I can give you the link, or whatever is best for you guys. But, LinkedIn is just look for Jason Swasey, Swasey. And feel free to reach out. My personal email address is Swasey, my last name, JAY@gmail.com. So I'll be on the lookout for whatever comes along, but I'm here to sort of help and do what I can to improve myself as well as the community.
That's great, Jason. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
No, I thought this was great. I think you're doing great things, and I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I think that this is really going to take off, and you'll go great places.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Thank you for listening. Stay on top of what we're doing by texting me at 647-372-2042. That number again is 647-372-2042. Follow us on social media as well. Join us on LinkedIn, where we have a company page and a group. On Facebook, we also have a Healthcare Security Cast community group. Follow us on Twitter at HC Security Cast, Instagram at the Healthcare Security Cast, and on TikTok as well. Also, feel to connect with me on any of these platforms. My name again is Brian, like the number 9, spelled B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton. I'm the only Brian Hamilton on any of these platforms, so I'm easy to find. Also, to make things simple, you can find links to all of these on my website, brianhamilton.com. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay safe and take care.